Aileen Wuornos was executed in October 2002, leaving behind two incompatible legacies. Even decades later, true crime historians and psychologists struggle to reconcile her legal record with her cultural image. One perspective frames her entirely as a victim. This narrative, often highlighted in popular culture, views her murders as the inevitable breaking point of a woman subjected to lifelong systemic abuse. Prosecutors provided a different account. They presented evidence of a predator who killed for money and used her victim's vulnerability to maintain absolute control over the situation. Her case is a milestone in criminology. She was the first woman to fit the FBI's formal definition of a serial killer, challenging a profile that investigators had built almost exclusively around male offenders. Understanding the case requires looking at the overlap between her history of trauma and the cold mechanics of her crimes. It requires asking when the victim became the predator. Her background provides a map of neglect. Born to a 14-year-old mother and a father already in prison for kidnapping and rape, Wuornos was abandoned at age 4. Her father eventually killed himself in his cell. She was raised by her grandparents in a home defined by physical violence and alcohol abuse. Wuornos later testified that this environment included years of sexual abuse at the hands of her grandfather. By age 11, she was trading sex for food and cigarettes. At 14, she became pregnant after a rape. Following the death of her grandmother and her brother, she spent her teens living in the woods of Michigan, hitchhiking across the country under assumed names. Society offered her no meaningful intervention. By the time she reached adulthood, she viewed survival as a brutal, transactional struggle against the men she encountered. In the 1980s, Wuornos settled in Florida, working as a sex worker along the central interstates. She lived a transient lifestyle, accumulating a list of arrests for theft and assault, while maintaining a volatile relationship with a partner named Tyria Moore. On November 30th, 1989, she picked up Richard Mallory, the owner of an electronics shop. He disappeared that night. Investigators found his body 2 weeks later off Interstate 95, shot 4 times with a .22 caliber pistol. Wuornos eventually claimed she killed Mallory in self-defense. She testified that he had become violent and she shot him only to prevent her own death. At the time, police ignored a critical detail. Mallory had a criminal record for rape, a fact that would have supported her claim of self-defense had investigators checked his history before dismissing her story. If the evidence stopped with Mallory, the narrative of survival would be difficult to dispute. His history made her claim of a lethal struggle highly plausible. However, Mallory was not the end. Over the following year, 5 more bodies were discovered along Florida's highways. The pattern shifted from a single act of survival to a series of calculated kills. Every victim fit the same forensic signature. They were robbed, shot multiple times at close range, and left in remote woods while Wuornos drove away in their stolen vehicles. The mechanics of her survival created the paper trail that led to her arrest. Between the killings, Wuornos and Moore pawned stolen cameras, jewelry, and tools. Wuornos used her real name or a thin alias, leaving a record for investigators to follow. In early 1991, Tyria Moore worked with the police to bring the case to an end. From a phone line monitored by investigators, Moore elicited a recorded confession from Wuornos, who eventually admitted to the killings. The very method she used to live on the margins, pawning goods for cash and relying on her partner, became the specific evidence that ended her run. Wuornos was convicted in 1992. Despite the revelation of Richard Mallory's history, she was eventually sentenced to death 6 times for the series of murders along the interstate. During her decade on death row, she abandoned her self-defense claims. In later interviews, she was blunt about her motives, stating she killed the men cold as ice and intended to rob them from the start. On October 9, 2002, Wuornos was executed. Her final words, involving a mothership, suggested a mind that remained deeply fractured until the end. Her final confessions complicate the tragic victim narrative. They force an audience to look past her history and see the reality of her actions. The case of Aileen Wuornos required the field of criminology to expand its understanding of female violence. She demonstrated that women could independently commit serial murders with the same calculated intent previously associated only with men. Her story remains a point of cultural friction because it resists a simple explanation. It exists as both a true crime case study and a sociological tragedy. Childhood trauma does not excuse murder, but here it provided the blueprint. Understanding the predator she became requires acknowledging the environment that produced the victim.